Brenda Currin is an OBIE Off-Broadway Theater Award winning actress, has appeared in films like In Cold Blood, The World According to Garp, Taps, Reds, as well as the cult classic CHUD. Brenda co-founded What Girls Know, a theater program for adolescent girls, and she's also associated with the Tennessee Williams Festival held in New Orleans. Oh, we have a lot to talk about. Brenda, come on in.
Hey, Amber.
Hey, Brenda, first off, I want to say happy birthday. Your birthday was this week.
Yes, it was 2 days ago.
And how did you celebrate?
I had a wonderful day. I live in New Brunswick, New Jersey now. So I have a 7-minute walk if I walk really fast and to the New Jersey Transit. I go into New York City, and I met my great friend and sort of conspiratorial collaborator, Irene Glazos. She's a wonderful actor. And we went to scope out a theater space at Theater Lab we're going to co-produce Terrence McNally's play, A Perfect Ganesh. It's just going to be a sort of the birth of our production this summer with a hopeful future ahead.
Now, will you be appearing in the play?
Yes.
Oh, I've read the play. It was marvelous. It's marvelous. And that's a great vehicle.
1993.
Yes. All right. So, Brenda, tell me.
And then I came home and had a party on the roof and with my favorite people and my wife. And so everything was wonderful.
Well, good. Congratulations. Congratulations. All right, Brenda, where did you celebrate your first birthday? Meaning, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Oxford, North Carolina. It was a tobacco growing town. It was the county seat of Granville County near Durham and Chapel Hill. And my granddaddy did grow tobacco. So I had, my mother was a Yankee. So there was I had, as my great teacher, John Shear said, I had the two energies going, the opposing energies.
You use what you got. How did you get the theater bug?
I was mainly interested in sports, and I stuttered as a kid. So it wasn't a blah, 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 blah stutter. It was and nothing would come out. So I went to a camp in Swananoa, North Carolina. It was in God's country, in terms of how beautiful it is. And it was for 20 girls. And I went there to ride horses and swim and do archery and riflery. And I panicked when I saw that dramatics was a requisite. It wasn't something I could choose. We were doing everything. And then I made this incredible discovery that I did not stutter when I was playing another part. It's not an uncommon story with some actors who stutter.
And singers as well, yes.
Pardon?
And singers as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Singing is the antidote to stuttering.
Okay, you got your start there in the camp. Where did you go from there?
Well, I just have to brag a little bit because I did win the Best Actress Award for our production of South Pacific, playing Bloody Mary.
Oh, did you black your teeth?
I did. I mean, I did everything that I would be run out on a rail these days. But we were 20 girls, and we performed the entire musical for an audience of 5. Didn't care. It was full out.
So, what did you do when you got home?
I felt a little lost, and I ended up excuse my language. The shit hit the fan with my family, and it was a big change for us all. And I ended up getting on a Greyhound bus and going to Kansas to live with my aunt and uncle and cousins. And so I ended up in Kansas. At age 16, I ended up back with my mother, and I was a difficult teenager. So she was, luckily for all of us, I went to the Girl Scout camp. And then the last Sunday I was there, fell off a 200-foot cliff landed on a highway, sort of slanted on my feet. And it was by the Susquehanna River. Two fishermen were in a rowboat. They rowed to shore. One came and covered me up while the other went, I don't know how far, to find his car and then drive to find a telephone. So all to say is my sports career was over. But luckily I had this other love I had discovered at Camp Alwanico. And so I went to it was a little school in Olathe, Kansas, and I went to Mr. Bill Moore's. He was the English teacher, and he kept his English classroom open for those of us who wanted to put on a play. And I was still on crutches, so we did a beautiful one-act play by Jean Giraudoux called The Apollo of Balak. It was just a one-act play. And it was a double-deck tape recorder, and my job was to run the tape recorder, and the music was Under Paris Skies. And I felt as though I had written the music. I was conducting it. It was so lucky that I had that love that I could go, I couldn't go to the gym. So I went to the English class and was part of making that beautiful one-act play in the English classroom at Olathe High School.
Where did you go to college?
KU, University of Kansas. And I had a very fortunate time there. I still stuttered, but when I signed up for the theater department, they had general auditions, and I got scared at the last minute, and I said, I'm just here to do props. I wrote it on my index card, so I didn't audition for anything until somehow I got the nerve to audition for the grandmother in some play and got a lot of laughs. So that was it. That was it. And then I was chosen to go on this USO tour of The Music Man. And then the incredible thing was that was back in 64. Mm-hmm. And it was the time of cultural exchange programs. So 6 of us were chosen to go to Eastern Europe, Poland, Czechoslovakia, the former Yugoslavia, and Romania. And it was just the most amazing 3 months of my life. And then when I came back, I was, trying to make up courses outside of the theater because I'd missed a lot of school. And I was renting a room from Steve and Julia Callahan, and they had this Victorian house in Lawrence, Kansas. And my room was at the top of the stairs, and the phone rang, and I happened to answer it. It was my acting teacher, Dr. Brooking, but I hadn't seen him for months because I was not going into the department. And he said, "Oh, Brenda, I'm glad you answered the phone. These Hollywood people are here. They're making this movie of In Cold Blood, and they're looking to see, who they could cast here. Why don't you come down and join us? So I did, and that's how I got cast as Nancy Clutter in the film of In Cold Blood.
What did that lead to?
It led to my coming to New York without having, I was not one of those young people who had a plan. I just thought when that happened to me, I thought, I guess I'll do this. So I didn't have any underpinnings. So I came to New York. I got a job at Macy's. But the great thing is that I was accepted into Uta Hagen's class.
Wow.
And I ended up getting married because I was selling Agua Lavanda men's cologne. And it was the same year as the movie A Man and a Woman. And it was this French movie. It was with Jean-Louis Trintignant and Anouk Aimée. And it had this beautiful theme. Anyway, this very handsome man came towards the counter and was buying Agua Lavanda men's cologne. And he asked me out, and I ended up marrying him. So
that same night?
I was snowed. And also I was a very young 23. I didn't, and I hadn't come out, and I think I was trying to I thought I was just, my best friends were married. They were a young couple in Uta's class. So I thought, I'm going to be like them. And, but boy, all I can say is a year and a half, I was very lucky to get out of it.
In that class with Uta, were any famous people or people who became famous in that class with you?
Oh my gosh, I wish I had a chance to think on that question. So many. I'm going to blank, but
that's fine. So, what was your first break in New York?
I got a job in a production of Our Wilderness. It's the one comedy that Eugene O'Neill wrote, and Ted Mann, who was the artistic director of Circle in the Square then, was directing and casting. And so he cast me. And it was done at the Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. And the wonderful Geraldine Fitzgerald was the mother. And Lucy Soroyan I played Muriel Macomber. And Lucy Soroyan, the daughter of William Soroyan, played the daughter, and I was married then. And so that was my first job. And then, I don't know, and then I started getting work. I did the Cherry Orchard with Ann Jackson at the Hartford Stage Company, and I did the Ghost Sonata at Yale Rep, a Strindberg play, and Andrei Serban, the great Romanian director, directed that. And I was very active at the Public Theater, and Joe Papp was, the big presence there then.
All right, you mentioned earlier you got laughs on your first time on stage and you really liked it, but you've been playing some heavy roles there that you've mentioned. Which do you prefer?
I prefer comedy. I have tremendous respect for great writing. And so I love to sink my teeth into, a great part. But I'm kind of a serious person, but there is that thing, you just have to trust me. There is that thing inside me that is funny, and it's when I'm the happiest.
I totally understand. All right, we're going to take a short break right now, but we're going to come back and talk about more of your past work. And we got some pictures, we got a film clip, we got lots more to talk about to Brenda. We'll be right back. Brenda, oh my, I've already heard so much about your career, but you mentioned your first movie was In Cold Blood. Now, Truman Capote, was he around when that was being filmed?
He was around for 1 week. It was press week, and he was not welcome on the set. He and Richard Brooks, the director, had a big fight. Richard Brooks now owned the rights to his book to make this movie. So he made himself kind of scarce, and we were staying in the Garden City Motel, and that was, I can't tell you how, it was just the most modest motel imaginable.
Modest.
Moderate. And we, Paul Huff, the boy who played my brother, Kenyon Clutter, and I got word that Truman Capote had requested meeting us, and would we please go to his room? So, of course, we did. And, he was in one of those plain little rooms, and he had a terrible cold, and he was propped up against, the sort of sad pillows, but he was propped up, and he was blowing his nose, I remember, on a bath towel. And we were sitting at the foot of the bed, and he just began to talk to us. And it was, he talked about what it was like for him to when he first came to Kansas. That was the very same day he had seen the little piece on the front page of the New York Times that said, "Family of 4 murdered for no apparent reason." And he came out there with Harper Lee, actually.
Wow.
But my point is that the way he talked to us, there was such a sense of just intimacy. He was interested in us, and he needed to talk. He said it was the last time he'd ever come to Kansas. I think it was a very painful visit for him. And, I did go to New York after I graduated, and I shared an apartment with Maryland Rapelier, who played Susan Kidwell in the movie. And we got a note from Truman Capote saying, I saw whatever the word is, the print, I saw the movie last night. It hadn't been released yet. And I think you girls should be very proud. And I would love to take you to lunch at the Plaza. And that he did. And, I had just moved to New York, and I just thought all of life was going to be that way. It wasn't, it was, but, and so there's been so much talk about Truman Capote and the movies about him. And, but the man that I met was, I felt love for him.
Oh.
I felt.
That's so nice. That's very, very nice.
Still do.
Very nice. Okay. Russell, we have some film clips of some of Brenda's work. Let's watch that.
When are you going to perform again, Tommy?
He's still traumatized by that stint in D.C.
Oh, please. He's still traumatized by the 8th grade.
Hold on. I'm out, ladies. It was another bad day for uniforms.
Will you tell your grown-ass daughter to do her own damn shirts?
My baby needs me.
See if she can play next week. Kathy's getting her hip replaced.
No, she's getting her knee replaced. I have the hip.
I love you, Aunt Marcy. Mwah.
This is a penis! Aunt Marcy, come on. We have all kinds of penis delight.
Oh, my God. Blue balls, penis. I've never seen so many penises.
I feel like I'm back in Vegas.
30 years ago.
I taught you that move. My whisker biscuit hurts.
Your whisker biscuit?
My pooter. My mush mitten.
Your vagina?
Oh, that's right. Ever since my little Terry was born.
How long ago was that?
64 years ago in September. Hello there, young fellow.
Hi.
Is your mommy or daddy home?
My mom's in there.
Do you like tuna casserole?
No, it's heinous.
Afternoon, Mr. Edward.
Good afternoon, Miss Maybelle.
Is Gossamer home?
George is over at Jimbo's trailer. Apparently he wrecked his bike last night and he's pretty banged up.
Oh, gracious.
He may be coming to stay with us for a while.
Well, I hope Jimbo will be all right. Gossamer has always been such a caring young woman.
Anything else I can help you with?
Would you mind giving this elastic to Gossamer for me? I want her to use it on the seersucker skirt she's working on.
Yeah, I'll put it on his workstation with a note on it.
All right, then. Goodbye.
Miss Maybelle, I'll be glad to carry that bag the rest of the way for you.
Thank you, Mr. Edward. You don't seem to know a strong woman when you see one.
Stanley! See? You're in trouble.
Are you okay? Oh, look at that. Oh, did I catch it?
You gotta get her.
Man trouble. You got it. Let's party.
Those are wonderful clips. Wonderful. So you keep pretty busy.
I do. There's a writer's strike now. So now it's a chance to do some stage work. But
Very good. All right, you've worked with some famous people. Tell me about them. Let's say The World According to Garp, some of the stars in that movie. Tell us about your experiences.
Well, it was Robin Williams and Glenn Close, and George Roy Hill was the director. It was, the book was such an extraordinary sensation. And so, watching the movie, I always give it as an example of one of the great screen adaptations, because the book had its own personality, and the movie also has its own personality. So it's true to the book in that way. But Robin Williams, he, what I remember the most is, he plays Garp, and I play Pooh Percy, who kills Garp. But between takes, he would do this, he was young then, and he played Garp, and he would have these sensitive scenes, and then the director would call cut, and the minute the director would call cut, Robin Williams would start entertaining the crew, just manic. Like he would just feed on his own cueing, and he would do it right up until the director would say action for the next scene. And I've heard many stories that that's who he was. And so that was an extraordinary thing to be right there, and just you couldn't believe his energy, that he could do that, that he didn't need a cup of coffee or something. And then it was the early days for Glenn Close, and she played the great character of his mother Jenny. She had been in a musical or two on Broadway. Mary Beth Hurt played his wife. John Lithgow played what was her name? Roberta, and it was just wonderful. So
that was probably one of the first trans characters in a major film, I believe.
I wonder, and I loved what John Lithgow just played her. The way he would play any other character, he just from the inside out.
He's very talented, very talented. Now, I read somewhere that you worked with Tom Cruise, or you had an encounter with Tom Cruise.
Oh, well, I was in a movie called Taps, and that was his first movie. With Timothy Hutton was the lead, but it was these Valley Forge cadets, and it was Sean Penn, and anyway, Tom Cruise. He was the sweetest boy, and he just had wonderful manners, and he would always sort of catch my eye and kind of wave and ask if he could, if I wanted something from the honey wagon, and so I adored him. And years later, he was already a star. He'd done Risky Business, and Risky Business made him a star, for sure. But I had moved to LA. I was recovering from a breakup, and I was just like roadkill. And I was in one of those huge LA grocery stores on a Saturday night, kind of on the early side, the big old cart. And I just, I really just did not know what to do with myself, except I didn't know what to buy or anything. And I see somebody waving at me at the cash register with a cart full of beer and Cokes and potato chips and you name it. And it was Tom Cruise. And he was waving and he said, "I'm giving a party tonight. Do you want to come?" Well, I was, it just, he did that. I just, lit from within. But can you believe it? I didn't go to the party. Yeah.
All right, Russell, we have some pictures of Brenda. Would you share some of those, please? Tell us about this.
That's me as Nancy Clutter. That's the actual horse, Babe. That was Nancy Clutter's actual horse. And I remember I went and rode Babe bareback. And I didn't even need the reins. I could tell Babe was just, kind of going along the orchard and the exact same paths where I'm imagining that Nancy rode Babe. And that particular pose was, the director said, look down, because the Clutters had this tree-lined, very long drive approach to their ranch house. And it was, the clouds were gathering in the sky. And so it's kind of a moody, it was kind of a moody feeling. But the director said, just look down that road as if you see a car coming, and of course that was mirrored by, much later in the film, because the murder scenes are a flashback at the end, but you see that car coming well, they turn off the engine so that it doesn't make any noise, and it just glides along, approaching the house.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
Another picture?
Oh, well, that's from CHUD. And well,
Brenda, whoa.
that's from CHUD. So a man named Doug Cheek directed it, and we shot it in Soho in New York City. And he said, just walk along that street, and when I say scream, just you have to pretend like you see something coming out of the sidewalk. So that's what I did. And so that picture looks like it's just like ordinary trash on the. So I hadn't actually seen CHUD at that moment, but that was coming up soon. I'm sure there was some well, that's me pointing the gun right at Robin Williams, and he looks up from the wrestling mat where he's teaching students, and he looks up and says, "Who?" And I shoot him. And there is a story that goes along with that. Do you have some time?
Sure.
Well, I had been filming taps in Pennsylvania. And in this business, you never know when you're going to. I already had the job to do The World According to Garp, but nobody knew when I'd be called to set. So I remember I lost out on thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in residuals, because I didn't sign a run of the. Thank goodness, because I was in a hotel room in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, when I heard I needed to be on the set of The World According to Garp the next morning, and the only scene they were keeping me for was to be maybe even the back of my head for being a mother for one of the cadets. And I skipped town. I left, and I got myself to the studio because the role in The World According to Garp was the role, and so I was really, I was really, playing with danger, because you just don't do that. So the scene, the first thing that happens when I get on set is they dress me up in the nurse's uniform, give me a gun, and it's one of the ones that when you pull the trigger, there's a kick there, there's a blank, but there's a kickback, and it's not a nothing thing to do. And also, from my fall off the cliff, I have a fused ankle, and I'm very self-conscious about my feet. And don't you know, the camera focused on my feet coming down the steps as I enter the wrestling room, and I make my way through these boy wrestlers, and on my way I pass Mary Beth Hurt, who's sitting on the bleachers reading a book, waiting, just keeping her husband company somewhat. And I make my way through this group of boys wrestling and on mats. And Robin Williams looks up and says, "Pooh, I shoot." And then all the wrestlers tackle me.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I'm seeing I'm about to run out of juice. I'm going to put this, my plug in. all the wrestlers tackle me, and it was a perfect take, except that one of the boys smiled, and so they had to do it all over again. And so I remember I turned around with the gun and I said, "Who smiled?" But we did it again, and it was another perfect take. So the minute that scene was over, I was called up to the executives' offices, and there was executives from the 20th Century Fox, from the Taps, and they were about to arrest me or sue me. And I remember the executive from Warner Brothers, I think it was Warner Brothers who produced The World According to Garp, and he said, if we didn't have that scene in the can, but it went so well that they somehow settled it. And I never tell that story because I behaved so badly. But I was,
You had to do what you had to do.
I had to do what I had to do.
Okay, Brenda, we're going to end this segment. We're going to be back for one more segment to talk about two of your favorite projects. So we'll be right back with Brenda.
Okay, great.
Okay, Brenda, you have two organizations that I'm familiar with. Tell me about the Organization for Young Girls.
Well, Amber, let's see, I was about to become 50, and I just felt my world was getting smaller. So I actually left the business of show and went to graduate school and got a master's degree in anthropology. And I was
in what?
Anthropology. I know. Go figure. I did my field work in Chiapas, Mexico, and I did my thesis about a contemporary Mayan theater company. But when I came back, I just had, well, actually, I'm remembering what really happened. I was going through that breakup, one of those breakups in my life, and I was writing my thesis, and a great producer friend of mine, Lynn Austin, she was concerned about me, and she said, Jessica Balboni is she's working with a group of adolescent girls down on St. Mark's Place. You should go check out what she's doing. She might, need some help. And so I had no interest whatsoever in doing that. I had no interest in doing anything at that moment. But I needed to be polite. So I politely called up Jessica and I said, Lynn says that I should come that you're doing marvelous work with teenage girls and that I should come down and observe. And she said, well, you can't come down and observe. You could come participate. So I went down there and I participated. And Amber, everything inside me changed so that's when Jessica Balboni and I started to plan our own program called What Girls Know. And we spent months making a business plan and wrote grant proposals. And it was the moment in time when there was real attention on the crisis that adolescent girls go through, coming from childhood and making that transition into puberty and adolescence, that there's a loss of self, and they lose themselves. And of course, I discovered, I was a stutterer, and I remembered what theater did for me, and emotionally, not just speech-wise, but emotionally at age 12. So that moment in time benefited us by we were immediately funded. And so I ended up Jessica and I worked with 2 different groups of girls. Then she went on to become the education director at the 92nd Street Y. I took over a directorship of What Girls Know, and Linda Lavin brought me down. She had purchased 3 or 4 houses in Wilmington, North Carolina, and wanted to start an arts foundation there to introduce herself to the town. She was going to move there. And we were friends, and I had sent her one of my proposals. And she called me up one Sunday and she said, I'd like you to come down and begin your program as a way of my introducing the Linda Lavin Arts Foundation. So I ended up directing it in Wilmington, in different parts of the country. That's how I ended up in New Orleans. It found its home there. So, and I Jessica and I did it kind of by the seat of our pants in the beginning, but then I got a real education from a great school out of NYU. It's now it's at CUNY in New York, but it's a methodology for creating original theater from the ideas of young people. So I directed it for 15 years, and we had some of the most wonderful my theory was always that I wasn't doing this work, it wasn't do-gooder work. It was to make excellent theater together. I thought that's what's going to benefit these girls is, because theater is, it addresses every developmental area of a kid. Cognitive, physical, emotional, cultural, you name it. And it's like a shortcut to expressing themselves. Yeah. And there's just nothing like it. So
how wonderful, how wonderful. Now tell me about your interest in Tennessee Williams.
Oh, I love Williams. I love Tennessee. Sometimes I refer to myself as a Southernist because I've also spent many, many years in adapting Eudora Welty's stories for the stage. So Williams is I love his writing so much, and I've done, I can't even tell you the number of Tennessee Williams. In fact, I'm going to St. Louis in the Monday after Labor Day to do a one act called Something Unspoken. It's a really interesting play. And 2 years ago, I did the Glass Menagerie in St. Louis. It was during COVID, so it was outside using the actual fire escapes where so much of the play takes place. So yes, and I'm involved in all the Tennessee Williams festivals in Provincetown, New Orleans, St. Louis, Columbus, Mississippi, Clarksdale, Mississippi. Every place where there's a festival is a place where Williams that had a real significance, either in his career or in his childhood or where he was born. He fell in love for the first time in Provincetown.
I can imagine. I fell in love many times in a night in Provincetown.
That's lucky. I think.
Brenda, thank you so much for talking to us. What a fascinating career. And the wonderful thing is, it's not over. You've got so much ahead of you, and I can't wait to hear more. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's been my honor, Amber. Thank you.
Thank you.